We are all philosophers because we ask the questions, the who, the why, the how, the what, the where, and so what. These questions apply to our teaching profession and philosophies of education. Before our class went a lot into depth, we were asked to give a 25-word definition about education. My definition was, education is learning how to deal with one another in life. A way to make our families proud. It's a means we can use to financially take care of our loved ones and at the same time grow in our spiritual and earthly wisdom as we search for the truth. For me, the truth is Jesus, whether or not I can incorporate him into my classroom. After completing this philosophy course, I learned that education, according to Dr. Stephen Hicks, is the process of learning and teaching the young the knowledge and skills necessary for adult life. He describes 3 important features of education: time, system, and money. I agree with these concepts in my philosophy of education because education can be a forever process. And by state requirements, we have to have a system in place that requires financial resources, especially in today's technologically advanced world. Now, let's really get into the philosophers. My goal is to include Socrates in my philosophy of education because I want to use the Socratic method. I want students to know they can ask questions. A lot of students can learn from the questions asked because sometimes other students may be too shy to ask questions in class. My goal is to also include Plato in my philosophy of education because I want students to seek to be perfect but understand we all are not. I want students to do their absolute best. I want to lead my students to a higher place. I am for having a cooperative environment, and while referencing Plato's allegory of the cave, we all have to help others who do not know the truth or may not be enlightened. This was very important for me because 1, I would explain to students that some classmates may not accept your help, as some prisoners in the cave did not accept the freed prisoners' help. And as a teacher, I would myself know that I have to teach even if I am at risk of being mocked or laughed at, even to death, as Socrates himself faced. In other words, learning may be painful, as Plato stated. And Plato is the one with his hands up to the sky because he was an idealist. To the right of Plato is Aristotle. I would incorporate Aristotle in my philosophy of education because realism, which he believes in, deals with developing critical thinking for students, which is so important for the rest of their lives. Also, Aristotle was also skilled in questioning and wanted the students to think and know what to think about. He also talked about the arts, literature, and basically the liberal arts, which are all found here at St. Peter's University. I would incorporate John Locke's teachings in my classroom because we are all born with a blank slate. We should all be open to all possibilities. I want my students to know that if he or she wants to be a cook, no, let them believe that they could be a chef. And similar to this is Maxine Greene, who also believed in keeping the why alive. And this goes back to Socrates as well. As a teacher, I want to always evaluate myself and why I act in certain ways. Another philosopher I would include is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. I believe that a child's knowledge should be his or her own. A child should receive practical experience of the world along with his or her education. My goal is to include John Dewey's pragmatism in my classroom because it's the perfect example of hands-on learning. I want to leave learning open for change as he believed. Another thing I believe in is that the teacher should be the guide and the students should be the ones to observe. Another element that I want to include into my classroom is Reconstructionism. I believe that multiculturalism does exist significantly in the classroom. This is a poster that I created for student teaching. It shows how we can be different, but we're also the same. So students from 3 different cultures and celebrate 3 different holidays got to see how many similarities we really have with one another. Another thing that I want to point out in the second picture is that the students all put their hands next to one another in the center and saw how we all look different, but we're really the same. So students get to appreciate our different cultures. And that was also a picture I took while student teaching. Additionally, another element that I would include in my philosophy of education is Marxism. I want to pursue equality for all children. I want all children to be able to go to school. However, I also think that students, and especially adults, so their parents in this case, should accept that sometimes we might not be able to have things that we should have in our lives. In my philosophy of education, I would also include behaviorism. This is an example of something called Class Dojo, where you can earn points, where you can subtract points for good or bad behavior. So for younger kids, I think that behaviorism is great because we can change behavior into more desirable outcomes. Moreover, I would also use postmodernism in my classroom because I want students to seek truth for themselves. This is somewhat political because I would actually encourage my students, as long as it's okay with the curriculum and guidelines, to truly believe in something because they truly believe in it, not just because their families told them what to believe in. Now, if I were to teach at a Christian school, my philosophy of education would be different because I would incorporate Jesus, Plato, St. Ignatius of Loyola, and C.S. Lewis in the following ways. I truly found Jesus in my sophomore year of college, and I gave him my everything. My biggest mission for my students is to just teach them how to grow in their relationship with Christ. My goal is to incorporate Jesus in a Christian classroom because he teaches me to love everyone and be willing to lay down one's life for a brother. As you can see in this verse in 1 John 3:16, it says, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters." I want to teach my students to love one another and to help one another. In a Christian school, I would also incorporate Plato because I want my students to seek to be perfect as the Logos is. Remember Plato pointing up to the sky? The truth is that God is perfect. But then I still want them to understand that we are not perfect, even if we do our best, but we should do our best. Moreover, I would use St. Ignatius of Loyola because I want my students to see that they can find God in all things. Being a Jesuit has a lot to do with having a great companionship and being generous as Jesus was and is. So I want my students to have those characteristics in their life. Lastly, C.S. Lewis is someone great that I would also reference in my philosophy of education because he taught me things such as writing about what interests us, avoiding magazines while writing research papers, which are all present in today's world. However, the most important thing that he taught is that there's more than just being an intellectual. There's actually finding God. And if you enjoy this quote, he talks about how God doesn't want anything from us. He just simply wants us. And I want my students to know that their Creator loves them. And in concluding this presentation, I want to just add a few extra goals that I would want in my classroom. I want to incorporate dancing and music into my classroom. If you can see this picture of me with the kids, you can see that we're having fun. I don't want my classroom to be a boring place. I also believe that children are our equals. They're not animals to be trained in a classroom. I also believe that students should be accepting of different race. We are all different, but we're really the same human being. And lastly, I want to engage and empower my students. I want them to be interactive during school. And I want them to know they are the future leaders, so I want them to be confident in being their best. Thank you very much for watching this presentation, and I hope you enjoyed my philosophy of education. God bless you. Have a great day.